Hey, this is Jonathan Clark with Life of Legacy, your key to a better life. Today I have with us Krystal Smith, who has a Master's of Arts in Teaching. She's the proud wife and mom of 2 children, ages 5 and 1, and she's the creator of the Renewed Teacher blog and network to support educators in staying focused on their purpose and keeping their light lit and their fire burning for their teaching profession. She's a fourth and fifth grade teacher with 15 years of experience. She's taught English, language arts, math, science, and social studies. She's also been an after-school teacher, enjoys being active in her school community, and has led professional development in cooperative learning and implementing centers in K through 6 classrooms. She's a self-proclaimed cool nerd, and I'll let her explain exactly what that means, and always enjoys the challenges of becoming a better person in life. Krystal, thank you so much for joining us on Life of Legacy today.
Thank you for having me, Jonathan. It's an honor to be here, and I can't wait to talk to you.
Wonderful, wonderful. So let's start with this cool nerd thing, because when I was growing up, being a nerd was not the coolest thing in the world. So what do you mean when you say that, when you say cool nerd?
For me, it wasn't cool for me growing up either, right? Like being a nerd is not what's up. You know, being smart, people got beat up for being smarter, got called the teacher's pet and all that stuff. But
Yes.
It worked for me, and my dreams came true. So when I go back and reflect on maybe how I was teased and made fun of because I was smart and, you know, worked hard and thought school was cool, it worked out. So I try to go back and teach my scholars, like, being smart is cool. Your dreams come true when you're smart. Working hard is cool. Your dreams come true when you work hard. There is nothing wrong with being smart, and you can get along with just about everyone. Just don't go out there thinking you're better than everybody else. It's okay to be smart. Just don't think you're better than everybody else because you are smart. You know?
Don't be self-righteous. Okay.
Right. So being smart is cool, and learning new things is cool, and it's fun. Like, the more you know, the more you grow, the more places you can go. And that's how I see it.
That's wonderful. And that idea and that mindset is, I think, so critical and so important for our kids, for them to embrace learning, especially because we're in the information age and things are changing so rapidly. So learning is a lifelong pursuit.
Right.
So if our
Absolutely.
kids don't enjoy learning, then it can really hold them back.
Right.
So I commend you for
Absolutely.
taking that approach.
Thank you.
So, okay, let me ask this as well. And you'll, I'm sure, get into this in your upbringing. But for me, when I think about the cool nerd mindset, when I was growing up, my mom emphasized education, learning. And for me, as a Black male in the area where I was growing up, that wasn't the norm
Right.
for African Americans in my area to have families that were really pushing academics the way that my family was pushing academics.
Yeah.
So it caused me to be a little bit of a misfit to a degree. And there's some stigma in the Black community that has been there about education based on history.
Yeah.
Is that part of your experience, or did you have a different experience?
In my household, my mom and dad, they didn't really say, oh, you need to be a straight A student, you need to be a straight B student, you need to get good grades, but they didn't tolerate mediocre work from us. They let us struggle, they let us grow, but mediocrity, it wasn't tolerable because they knew we could do better. I remember being in high school and I wanted to get a job because I wanted to make my own money to do what I wanted to do with it. And this is when I knew how important education was to my parents. Without them necessarily being direct and telling me it was, they would not let me get a job because they wanted me to keep my grades up. And I was like, oh, is that serious? And so my dad ended up having, to pick up side gigs, so that he could give us what we still wanted, but also make sure that we still did well in school. Like my parents, I'm a first generation college graduate. My uncle, he did go to college and graduate, but in my household, neither of my parents went to college. My grandparents did not go to college on either side. My great-grandparents didn't go to college on either side, so first gen. And I don't even know if college was the goal for them growing up for me and my sister. I do have a younger sister who also was a college graduate. But it wasn't always apparent how important school was. We just know that they got us up to go every day. It's just what we had to do. We just had to go to school because we had to go to school. But when they said, no, you can't get a job, I was like, wait a minute, I want to make some money. The allowance wasn't doing it. It wasn't enough. That's when I knew that it was important to them. And then when my dad actually went out and picked up a couple extra side gigs and things like that, that's when I knew, like, oh, they really don't want me to work. They want me to focus on this, and they want me to be able to have fun. Because I didn't just I wasn't just like an academic, like scholar in school or whatever. My grades they were good. I mean, I like A's and B's, a couple C's here and there. They weren't perfect. But I did feel bad when I got C's. And I think that came from them. I think I was also involved in other extracurricular activities. So that wanted me to have balance. So they didn't want me to work because they didn't want me to have to give up certain things. And they knew that being a balanced person just made life overall better. So my community, though, I did grow up in a low-income community, predominantly African-American. And looking at some of my peers, you could tell that school either wasn't as important to them or as important to their family. At the time as a child, you don't really know. But you don't know, I didn't know what was going on in other people's lives. I didn't know how they were doing in school, or if they were failing, if they were passing. I just know what was happening with me and my family. But fast forward 20, 25 years later, and maybe the trajectory that people's lives have taken, and then talking to people about, their parents' expectations and their own dreams and hopes coming true or not coming true. You can tell somewhat of their past and somewhat of their history. And doing the comparisons, you can see what was important to some people and what people needed to have. Like, some kids had to work. They didn't have a choice to work, but in high school and things like that, they had to help their family make money.
Right.
And working you do have to give up some things in order for that to happen. And I was fortunate that my father and my mother, they made my sister and I not have to give up certain things. Like, we were able to do musicals in high school. We were able to be athletic and play in different sports and things like that. So we were able to focus on our academics, but also our extracurriculars. And I think that definitely plays a role in being a cool nerd. Because to be honest, my sister and I, we got along with the jocks and we got along with the academic people. We got along with pretty much everybody because we had that balance. But I attribute all of that to my parents and their choices for us.
Okay. Get it. I got it. So, and that's important too, because I talk about exploration a lot and how that plays a role in really figuring out what your strengths are, what your gifts are, and where you want to go in the future. You have to be able to try different things and be well-rounded. And plus, when you grow up, it's not like when you pursue a profession or you do something, you're doing it in isolation of everything else.
Right.
You have to learn how to navigate different things all at the same time.
Absolutely.
So I think being well-rounded is very important. And that's great that your parents, advocated for that too.
Yeah.
Very interesting. So, and I want to get your take on what you're seeing as a teacher among today's students in that regard later down the line.
Yeah.
But first, I want to learn a little bit more about you.
Okay.
So I'm going to be a little nosy, if you don't mind, Krystal. I'm going to ask a few questions about you, and I'm going to pry a little bit, and hopefully you'll play along with me and give us a little bit of scoop about you. Does that sound good?
I'll do my best. All
right. So describe your childhood a little bit. Tell me a little bit about, first, who you were as a child. What was your personality like? What activities did you enjoy? What were you like as a kid early on before the world started to guide you?
Taking it back. So I guess like my earliest memory, I would go back to maybe 5 or 6 years old. My parents, my parents were married. And I remember that being important to me because they made it important. My mother, she got sick when I was about 6 or 7 years old, probably before then. I was 3 when my sister was born, and I know that she was in the hospital for, a period of time after my sister was born. My mother is a diagnosed schizophrenic. So, needless to say, that plays a role in how I was raised. It wasn't all peaches and cream. I didn't notice my mother really being sick until I would say my teenage years, though. Either my dad did a really good job hiding it, or my mom's medicines were superb. I don't really know. But I remember being 6 years old and we having to move from one neighborhood to another to be closer to my grandparents. Because my dad couldn't do it by himself. My mother, she was in the hospital for an extended period of time, dealing with her mental, instabilities and things like that, and her mental health needs. And I remember moving to our new house. My sister, she was with us. We lived next door to my mother's parents and down the street from my father's parents. I had an aunt and uncle that lived up the street. I had another aunt and uncle that lived maybe a 5-minute drive down the road. So we were very, very close to, where our family was. The houses that we lived next to were the houses that my parents grew up in. So the people that lived there back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s were still there. Mm-hmm. So it was that tight-knit community that if I was down the street doing something bad, then my neighbors were going to tell my parents. They were going to tell my dad. They were going to tell my grandma. They were going to tell my grandfather. They was going to tell everybody.
That's old school.
Really nothing I could do to get in trouble because somebody was going to snitch,
Yeah, they were going to tell. Somebody knew you. They knew who your folks were. One phone call on the phone with the cord on it.
Yep. Yeah. So my dad moving back to his childhood neighborhood was intentional. He knew that the village was important. And he knew that being like not really a single father, but a single father for a short period of time because my mother was unable to, be home. He knew that he couldn't do it by himself and that my sister and I would need female influences in our lives and things like that with our mom not being there. So I don't particularly recall being sad. I don't even remember my mom came back home, and I don't think I had a point in time to be sad because school was there. I had my friends at school. I had my family, my extended family nearby. I'm sure if I were to dig really, really deep, then there might be some things that affected me that, have contributed to how I am today. But I do think having that family and that village surrounding us was extremely helpful. My dad worked a lot and it never stopped until, the day he passed. And it never stopped. He worked a lot. But having that extended family, like I said, that village around really helped mold us and affected us and, helped me become who I am today. My mom, she always talks about me being, so I may have been about 7 or 8 years old. So maybe second or third grade, she remembers me walking around the house with papers all the time and playing school, and being on the front porch, telling little kids what to do and teaching them and stuff like that, having little chalkboards.
a little window into the future, yes. Right?
Yes, I remember the end of second grade and me asking my teacher if I could take all the books home. All the books that kids didn't use or threw away, if I could take these books home and these papers home so that I could play school over the summer. I do remember that, and I was about maybe 7 going on 8 years old. But
okay.
But my mother remembers that too, which is cool because she like I said, it was a foggy time back then, and she doesn't remember everything, but there are certain things that she remembers. I'm like, I remember that too, mommy. So yeah. So this teaching thing's been, I think most kids play school, right? And then everybody doesn't grow up to become.
I don't know about most. I don't know about most because I'm trying to think back. I don't think
play school.
No, I don't think we played a lot of school when I was coming up. So.
Oh man, that is funny. Okay, some kids played school.
Yeah, it sounds like that might be something that was fixed toward you
Yes.
How many other kids did you get to participate? Were you the oldest that got these kids to play school with you?
I definitely was the oldest. Like I was the oldest for a long time. And I at one point in time I got tired of playing with my little sister, but I was definitely the oldest, and there were maybe like 2 or 3 other kids around. And it was usually girls. So
Okay, okay. Yeah, no, once I was out of school, there was no playing school for me.
I understand.
No, but I'm glad that is definitely a window into the future for you, and to see that you were at that early age. You said
Yeah.
maybe third gradish playing school. That's an early indicator that this is something that would be a good fit for you going forward. And that's why I always ask about where you started in your interest
Yeah.
early, because we're truer to who we naturally are a lot of times early in life, and then circumstances maybe cause us to drift away from it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that's why I like to ask that question. So very interesting. So let me ask you, you started out playing teacher, you got
Mm-hmm.
neighborhood in, and you're running class. What did you like about that? Like what really fed you from the activity?
Um, that's a good question. Let me think. I just enjoyed helping people.
Okay.
Um, and having fun. So when I really think about it, it was fun. And then when I was able to show my sister something she didn't know and she got it, that feeling felt good.
Okay.
And it didn't just feel good to me, it felt good to her, right?
Oh, really?
So she was like, I did it. Like that, like when little kids are like, I did it. Like that, seeing them celebrate their wins makes me feel good. And it's still the same today. Like when I see like one of my students they've been struggling and struggling and struggling, and they finally get it. And you like whether they celebrate or not, you can see that look in their eyes that they start to feel good about themselves, and that makes me feel good. Like, wow, I was really able to help this kid see. And even when they don't get it, like I don't feel disappointed. It's just it's not their time yet. Like
Right.
eventually everybody gonna learn how to walk. Eventually people gonna learn how to talk. Eventually people gonna learn how to write. Just may not be your time. So
True.
when they don't, I don't get disappointed when people don't learn what you expect them to learn when you expect them to learn it back. They'll eventually get it. So
That's a good attitude to have, because I'm gonna tell you, I definitely understand what you mean in terms of when you see that light go
mm-hmm,
off, because I've been
mm-hmm.
a tutor and a mentor and work with kids a lot, do life coaching with teens. So when you see them make a transition, or when they finally get it and something clicks,
Yeah.
it's an amazing feeling when you see that happen for them. And you're just so happy to see them finally move further toward their potential,
Right.
because
Right.
you knew they could get it, but sometimes they don't know yet, right? They question it.
Mm-hmm.
So to see them finally get it, and then that light in their eyes when they realize they could
Yes.
do it,
Yes.
it's such a beautiful thing, right?
Yes. That and that like that right there is what keeps me going. Even with my own children, like just seeing them reach certain goals that they have for themselves. Like even the baby, like learning climbing up the steps, like yay! Like the first time he climbed up the steps, it was so exciting.
Yeah. Well,
So
for
yeah, it's a really
me,
good feeling.
I heard your more evolved mindset about, if they don't get it now, that's okay. They're going to get it
Mm-hmm.
later. That patience is important, because
Ooh,
if you're feeling the pressure as a teacher to make them get it, that pressure transfers to them, and they feel it.
yeah,
And then if they feel like they're disappointing you, or like they're not moving fast enough, it can slow down their development.
right. I would say that's one of the hardest things about teaching is because you do have these expectations, you do have these deadlines that you have to meet. And sometimes like you do everything you can, the kid does everything they can, and you don't meet that deadline because that's what the state gives you, or you don't meet that deadline because that's what your district or your school gives you. And that's one of the hardest things. But like as a human being, not as a teacher, as a human being, we know everybody's not going to meet the same goals at the same pace. Like that's reality. We can keep striving for, we can keep working for, but we know that's not how the way human development works. I mean, I don't want to say that the goal is nonsense, but the reality of it is that we do not meet the same goals at the same pace.
We don't.
We don't, and that just is what it is. Like you have these even with babies, you have these milestones that they should be walking around this time. There is a range. It's not just on their third month, the 27th day at 1 p.m. they're going to roll over. No,
Doesn't work like that.
It doesn't work like that. So I know, because that's my reality. I'm gonna do my best to get y'all ready for this test, but at the same time, our goal is going to be here. Everybody's not going to reach that goal at the same time, and that helps me stay grounded, and it helps me from getting overwhelmed.
Okay.
And stressed out. But I'm going to try my hardest to make sure these kids get to where they need to be by what the district and the state expects. But I'm not going to stress out if I don't.
Yeah, and that's a great mentality to take into it. Especially, you would think that maybe the pressure that you feel to do a good job based on the standards set for you, that represents success, for a teacher, that pressure might get to some educators. Would you say that?
Yes, I think it gets to a lot of educators, and I think it's one of the main reasons why educators, they don't stay in the field as long as, well, they don't stay in it for their entire career. People like, the way the teachers stay into the length of time teachers stay in a profession is like up to 5 years. If they don't make it past 5 years, usually they go and try something else.
Okay.
And then even like there are teachers that have 15 years. This year they're done. Like, I'm done with teaching. This year is too much. We're not giving grace. Some teachers are they're fed up and they're done. And most times it's not because of the kids. Usually it's other bureaucratic issues. It's the expectations, that the unwavering, unrealistic expectations that are put on teachers. Sometimes it's systemic racism, and having to overcome those issues, and having to do things that just don't make sense sometimes.
Okay.
And when you're not prepared for those things early on, or you're not shown those things over time, and they kind of like bombard you, and you don't have other coping mechanisms, or you don't have healthy self-care practices built in, or you don't really understand what your purpose is in the first place, then you're more likely to give up. You're more likely to quit. You're more likely to not realize that, not accept that you're not going to have 100%, what's the word I'm looking for? Success. Like, you're like in the field of education, growth is success. Not having all of your kids be proficient is success, but having them grow towards that proficiency is success. Like, there are teachers that, well, I can't never get 100% of my kids be proficient. Man, you probably never will. Like, and you have to, like, you kind of have to accept that. That doesn't mean don't work towards that. It just means you have to accept that. And some teachers that don't, and then some teachers that don't, they often give up quicker than you would like them to. So teaching is definitely a challenging career. You definitely have to have a certain mindset and a certain level of grit to be able to deal with it. And sometimes you just got to change schools, change districts, have a different principal.
Okay.
Because all schools are not created and they're not created equal.
Okay. And I want to get more into that later, but and I'm gonna let you talk about your journey, because I know you changed schools, and you had a period where you kind of were challenged with your motivation as a teacher. So we're definitely going to get into that. Before I drift too far away from your childhood, I want to reel us back, because we started out saying, hey, you're playing school in the yard, you got a classroom full of kids, and then we're talking about that spark that you
Yes.
get from teaching and that light. And we saw your face light up when you talked about that moment when you see somebody's getting it, and how seeing your sister get it was fulfilling for you. And it was really something that signaled to you that that was something that you wanted to continue, right?
Yeah.
So let's go back there, and then we'll work our way back to the present and talk about the current educational system.
Absolutely.
So a lot of kids, you purchased my book. Thank you for doing
Mhm.
that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
But Finding My Why is a book I wrote about purpose. And the point of me writing that book was to encourage kids to think about what their purpose might be and start identifying where their gifts are
Hmm.
and how they can use those gifts to serve others, and to hang on to those gifts and stay aligned with those gifts through adulthood, so they can end up functioning in an area where they can be of the most service, the highest level service to the world,
Right.
and be the most successful for themselves, right? So you, as someone around 7, 8 years old, right, you're having these classroom sessions, and have this spark about teaching and seeing people learn and helping people through
Hmm.
that gift and that passion. How did you hang on to that and end up staying in that lane through adulthood? Because most people don't. Most people, they have something they do when they're young, something they're passionate about, and someone or something, some circumstances or something guides them away from it. How did you stay locked in? Was it encouragement from parents, someone in the community? How did you stay along that tangent and stay aligned with your passion?
Great question. I actually did drift away from teaching. And when I was a senior in high school and applying to college and all that stuff, I actually applied to the school of business. I wanted to be an accountant. So not only did I enjoy teaching, I enjoy learning, but I also enjoy money and I enjoy math. So we go really far back to maybe like 5 years old. I wanted to work in a local grocery store because I wanted to touch the money, right? I wanted to exchange the money. And then I was like, well, wait, I can be a banker. So I wanted to be a banker because I wanted to touch the money. I wanted to make the
Okay.
money, touch the money. So I knew that math was important. And then fast forward, I like being physically active. So double dutch, I want to be a professional double dutch jump roper. And then,
That's
but I
interesting.
was
Do they
also,
have that? Is that
no.
okay. I thought I missed something. I was like, where are these? Where is this at? I've never seen it before. Okay.
But like that, I was like, yeah, I could be a professional double dutch jump roper. No, that's not real. Or at least I don't think it's real. It might be, I don't know.
Maybe we're
But
wrong. We should look that up
we have
afterwards.
to
I
look
haven't
that
seen
up.
it yet.
Yes. But I would going back up to junior senior year in high school, and it's time to apply to college. I had been in several different organizations, and then I realized like teachers make this amount of money, accountants make this amount of money. Let me apply to business school, go that route. I didn't know what business I wanted to start. I just knew I wanted to work with money and make money. But I had an internship my junior year with an accounting firm, and I was bored out of my mind. And like, even as an internship, this was like back in 2001, 2002, maybe, I was making about $9 an hour. And I was like, well, wait, I'm only 16 years old making this amount of money. Imagine what I'll make when I actually get my college degree. Woo! But I could not, it was so boring. I could not subject myself to being in a cubicle, perhaps being in a cubicle, being bored all day. Even if I was, crunching numbers and dealing with numbers, I couldn't do that. So I didn't get accepted into the business school, which was probably a blessing. I got accepted into a general studies at the University of Pittsburgh. And so I just kind of I still didn't know what I wanted to do at that time, even though teaching kept coming back to the forefront. So
Okay.
I focused on my general education credits, in my freshman year. And then I would say maybe midway through my freshman year, I was like, you know what, I still want to be a teacher. And just in interacting with some of my mentors in college, I felt the other end of getting that spark. Like, they were helping me, and I still enjoyed, and I was like, I want to do this for somebody else. And I knew that being a teacher would give me the feeling. And not just teaching content, not just teaching math, not just teaching English language arts and social studies and science, but I actually leaving a legacy through children and helping them realize their dreams. Because as a child, I wanted to be a teacher, and lo and behold, I grew up and that dream came true. If my dreams can come true, so can yours. And they can come true by working towards them, by learning the content that you need to know to become a well-rounded person, traveling the world, meeting different people from across the world. And I would say distance learning makes that possible.
Okay, yeah.
Will tap into your classroom with ease. And it just, but off topic, but there were several people, not necessarily trying to drive me into teaching, but have made me have that feeling that I had when I was younger. And they kept taking me back to teaching. And I feel like just all of those instances really, I would say, influenced, not guided me, but influenced me to make that final decision.
Okay. So that spark coming back was the
Yeah.
indicator that, hey, I'm on the right track.
Right. Exactly.
Okay. And that was, I'm glad you shared that with me, that, you actually did almost waver a little
Mm-hmm.
bit, go some different directions, but it seems like the stars kept aligning for you to kind of come back
Right.
to the teaching profession.
Yep. Yep.
So did you have any mentors growing up that kind of helped you as well?
I had a lot. So, like I said, I grew up in a low income community, so they had a whole bunch of different resources there for us to help us be successful. So, at the end of my third grade year, beginning of fourth grade, there was a program called the I Have a Dream program that promised every student in my class, there were 95 of us, that if we graduated from college, they would give us a scholarship to go to college. So that route was set very early. We were 8, 9 years old, 10 years old. And they're saying, hey, we'll give you a college scholarship if you graduate from high school. So back in about 1994, 1995, I was in fourth and fifth grade, and I did have a mentor, a tutor. She would come to my house. She would pick me up. We would go out on like little dates and things like that. We would talk about just life in general. She helped me with math, and I remember I struggled with science. I didn't really like science that much back then. But she also helped me develop a passion for reading, and like learning to enjoy reading just for the sake of reading, not to learn something new, not necessarily to, learn some main idea, skill, or things like that. She really helped me find books that were interesting to me that I would want to read in my spare time. So that was my first experience with a mentor. And that was when I was a part of the I Have a Dream program that started back when I was in third or fourth grade.
Okay.
And again, they promised us a scholarship that if we graduated from high school, we could go to college. Now in third and fourth grade, I wasn't really thinking about college. I don't even know if I knew what college was at that point in time. But that was the promise they made us, I said, in middle elementary school. So that was my first experience with a mentor. My second experience, I had lots of tutors in middle school. I became a part of a program called Investing Now. And basically their purpose was to help Black people, Black students from, low-income communities, basically develop their passion for science and technology and things like that. And I still didn't like science, even in that program. It wasn't until I became a teacher that I really started liking science. And this is because it was challenging for me. I don't know why it was so hard. But like that program kind of, gave me some background knowledge that I didn't have, that maybe that's one reason why I was struggling with the content. But I had lots of tutors. I would say I was, in 8th grade or 9th grade when I started that, but like the seniors, they were in the program, they were like mentors and tutors to us, like guiding us through the program so that we could eventually become tutors and mentors for other students. My real life mentor, her name is Tanya Gore White. And she was actually the program director of the I Have a Dream program a couple years down the line.
Okay.
And she was just that positive force that no matter what, always believed in me. Like, just, I get kind of emotional thinking about how impactful she was in my life. And we still keep in contact to this day. I've been out of high school almost 20 years.
Oh, wow.
But, yeah, it'll be 20 in 2022.
Okay.
But yeah, she really just supported me. Like, even when I made mistakes, like life altering mistakes, things that could have really changed my life, she was always there. And if there was some things I could talk to her that I couldn't talk to my parents about, but she would always encourage me, yeah, you need to talk to your mom and dad about that one. And I would be so mad, but I did not want to tell them. But she would, but no, because of her, she definitely, strengthened the relationship with my parents. Like, I feel like I could be a little bit more honest with them, even when I was scared. Like, she just was like, she gave me a little bit more backbone. And I could call her today. I haven't spoken to her probably about a year, but I could call her today, and I know that she would give me the right, guidance and the right advice, because of her experience in life, So I've had and those are just like people I like gravitated to and chose, but also kind of took me under their wing. Today, more of my mentors are like people that are my peers, but like a little bit older with a little bit more experience, that are going through some things that I eventually want to get to. Like, I know, my cousin, she is my cousin Sharice. She's one of my mentors. She may not know this, but she's one of my mentors. And she's an entrepreneur, business owner. And I don't know if I necessarily want to take that route. Like, I always say, I don't want to leave teaching. I want to teach. I want to be a career teacher. But I do want to have my thing on the side in case teaching doesn't work out. Maybe I get laid off or they start cutting positions and things like that. And I need to have an income, right? So, but like, she is extremely talented and motivating and encouraging people and inspiring people to take care of themselves. Compassion fatigue is what she focuses on. And as educators, we do have that compassion. Like, we get tired because we care so much about other people. And she is, whenever I feel that way, she's my go-to person. And I think we need different types of mentors for different things.
Yes.
And like, we need mentors to parenting mentors. Like, I've never been a parent before, so I need a parenting mentor. Teaching mentors, even though I have 15 years and there are still teachers that have been teaching longer than me and can give me some sound advice when things, get tough, or when you feel like things are going great, but they're really not that great,
Yeah.
People that are unbiased. So I think we need mentors for all types of life, even, being married. Just having marriage mentors, like my aunt and uncle, they are a great source of inspiration. They've been married, maybe 30 years. And my parents were married for a long time too, but it's different when it's your parents, because they don't want to see their child hurt. So they don't always give the most unbiased information,
Agreed.
So just you need mentors for all different types of life. And I've had that opportunity to have that. And I feel like even teaching at times, it gives me an opportunity to be a mentor to some of my students.
Okay. And you gave several examples of different mentors in your life, which is so powerful, because I think sometimes we underestimate the power of mentors to help us reach objectives and be our best selves.
Mm-hmm.
So, given the fact that you have had so many mentors, what advice would you give for someone who says they can't find a mentor? Because I hear that quite a bit. If I recommend that, hey, a mentor is a great resource and a great tool to help you reach the level you want to reach. But, you want to make sure you choose someone who knows the area, and you're aspiring to be successful, someone who's has some experience and can speak from what they've gone through versus just, just concepts, just things like that. So what advice would you give for finding mentors in your life and in your circle, and identifying people that can be guides for you?
As an adult, finding a mentor is finding someone that you connect with, someone And it's all about building relationships and being honest with yourself about what you really want and knowing what you want. So I would say, first off, again, you have to kind of know what you want, and you have to really be willing to develop a relationship. You can't try to do something surface level, because in order to have the best mentorship relationship, you have to have a relationship. You have to get to know that person. They have to get to know the true you, and you have to get to know the true them. So you have to be open to putting yourself out there, to being vulnerable with somebody. And if you're not willing to do that, you're probably not ready for a mentor. Like I said, Miss Tanya, I was very vulnerable with her as a teenager, and she knows things about me that nobody knows. And that was a teenager, but even still as an adult, 36 years old, there are things that I will still talk to her about, even now. And that's because that relationship has been formed and that history is there. Just starting out, it just was kind of like, oh, I like her, she likes me. She's doing something that I eventually want to do one day. And we were open with each other. Like, she told me about her life growing up. And that was important to me. And it sounded like my life, so I was able to relate to that. But I had to be willing to listen. I had to be coachable.
Okay.
So that's my second thing. You have to be willing to listen. You have to be willing to learn. You have to be ready to grow. And you have to be coachable. You can't be a know-it-all.
Okay. Did you ever approach someone and ask them to formally mentor you, or was it a situation where there were relationships already in your life and you noticed an opportunity to learn and maybe just went to someone with specific situations in which you needed help versus a formal declaration of mentorship?
I have never approached someone in that manner. It was more so a relationship was formed and a mentorship blossomed from that relationship.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, that's a really good question. It gives me some food for thought.
Yeah, and that's what I was trying to get to in learning that, oh, you had so many mentors, so many people that were helping to guide you, and it kind of just happened. It ensued based on relationships already present. It wasn't some formal arrangement that you
Right.
had with a specific person, and I think that's where some people miss when they say they can't find a mentor. They're thinking it's going to be some guru, one person that they go to and agree to have this relationship in advance,
Right.
but it doesn't really work out like that.
Right.
You
Right.
know,
And most of the mentorships I've seen, even from the outside looking in at other people, it usually, to me, it looks like it blossoms from a relationship that was there. Or something, it just grows over time into a mentorship. But I do know that people do ask, will you be my mentor? And that works out too for some people. It just hasn't been my experience.
got it. Okay. So you would say nurture relationships.
Absolutely.
I would imagine that would include not burning bridges and being mindful of how you present yourself, right?
Yes, absolutely.
And you said be willing to be vulnerable and
Yes.
be open to guidance
Yes.
and criticism.
Yes. The good and the bad, accept it all.
Okay. Great advice. Great advice, Krystal.
Thanks.
All right. We're going to take a brief break, just a short intermission, and then we're going to come back and I want to talk about where you are now,
Okay.
what you're observing in the educational system. I want to talk about what you're seeing in terms of COVID and distance learning. How is it impacting educators as well as students? And where are you going from here? What do you want to see at the end of your journey?
All
Sound good?
right. Yes, sir. Sounds great.
All right. We'll be right back. All right. So we're back with Life of Legacy and Krystal L. Smith. Pause. Okay, so we're back with Life of Legacy, and today we have Krystal L. Smith, the creator of the Renew Teacher blog and support network for teachers. And she has given us all of her scoop and her background about how she got on the path she's on today, how she started out as a child and was able to stay in line with her passion. And she's going to give us a window into her experience as an educator and where she's going from here. Before we leave her backstory, I want to get also a little information on how her experience, her family experience, impacted her today, and what strengths has it given her, or perspective has it given her that helps her be more effective today. So Krystal, can you tell us a little bit about how your family experience affects you now and what you take from that to be more effective in your career and in your life?
Yes, yes. So when so growing up, my mother, like I said, she was in the hospital, and she was a stay-at-home mother once she got out of the hospital. So my father, he worked, and my mom was at home, and I think that was a good thing for my sister and I. But what I learned from that is that I saw my mother didn't really have her thing. And by her thing, I mean her passion. I know she liked to sew. She often made clothing for my sister and I. And we enjoyed her making clothing for us and even seeing her make things for herself, but it didn't stick. So her thing was her daughters. Her things were my sister and I. And growing up, and when we grew up, like we're grown now, we have our own lives. We're mothers, we're career women, and my mother doesn't have her thing. But I saw that growing up, that there was like something that she didn't have. And I knew that I didn't want to be that same way. I don't just want to be a stay-at-home mom. I enjoy having my career. I enjoy having my thing and living my dream and having my passion, which is teaching. And I know that, so seeing her influenced me to have that drive to want something more. And I know that with my husband and myself having our drive, it's my hope that them seeing us live our dream and work hard to make things happen for ourselves impacts them in a positive way. So it's so seeing my mother not necessarily have her thing definitely influences me to make sure that I have my thing, because I feel like sometimes she's just a little bored, a little lonely sometimes.
Okay.
And that's not what I want for my life, and that's not what I want for my children's lives. So it's important that, to me, I learned that it's important for us to have our own thing, to be our best possible selves.
And I think it's so powerful that you're living that by example, because, like you said, a lot of people grow up and they don't get to see their parents model that. But and even though you didn't see it from your mom, you said you saw it from your dad.
Yes. My dad, he did have a full-time job. He was the main source of income in our home. But like I said, he also had a whole bunch of side gigs as well. He was a DJ on the side. And he did pretty well, but that was his thing. Music was his thing and hearing his stories growing up, music was it. He played the drums, he played the bass guitar, he played the keyboard, he played the flute. That was the thing he played when he was in school. But then growing up, music was always his passion, his thing. And had he had more time on this earth, he probably would have gone even further, even at the age that he was. He probably would have gone even further in the music industry, because he was really good. But he had his thing. So I believe that he died somewhat of a happy man, but seeing him have his drive, it let me know that, I need to have my thing too, because if I don't, what happens when these kids grow up and they move out of the house and they start living their own lives? I'm not going to have anything to, do. So,
yep. Absolutely. Very good point. Have you seen Soul yet?
I did see Soul actually, we watched it on Christmas.
Okay, we watched it last night, but it made me think about your dad when you were describing him having music, music career on the side.
Yep.
It made me think about your dad, because the main character was a musician who was chasing his passion. So it just made me think about that. Great movie, by the way. If anybody
it was deeper than I thought it would be.
It was it made me think about some things.
We sure did.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so Krystal, I want to get into also your experience as an educator, and I want to talk about the Renew Teacher, right?
Absolutely.
So let's start with what you see in the educational system now, and what led you, based on your experience, to create the Renew Teacher?
So my fourth year teaching, which was, let's see, 2012 maybe, that was a very, very challenging year for me. And at the point in time, I couldn't really put my finger on it, and I wanted to quit. But like I said before, seeing other people's lights light up makes my light up, right? So that year, I was fortunate enough to have a student teacher. And like I said, my class, they were a rough bunch. Even my first year wasn't as rough as this fourth year. And I couldn't quite figure out why, but when I thought about it, I knew exactly why that year was rough. It wasn't, it just didn't start off the way it was supposed to, due to some of the decisions that the principal and the counselor had made prior to my knowledge before coming into that classroom. But what gave me the drive to keep going and not quit was the fact that I had that student teacher. And I said, okay, here's this new teacher right here. If I quit, what is she going to do based off what she learned from me in this experience? So I knew that I had to really dig deep, learn a couple more things about, just classroom management and engaging students. And I really had to show her the ropes to help her navigate through that. Because that year, if she wasn't there, I probably would have quit. And if not that year, the next year I probably would have quit. So that year I called off a couple of days, went to a couple of trainings, read a couple of different books just to help develop myself as an educator. Because my first 3 years were really, really good. And then this fourth year, I'm like, well, wait, what is going on? Why do I suck all of a sudden? Why am I terrible now? But I knew that I wasn't done learning. And that's when this lifelong learning idea realized like every year is not going to be high. Every year is not going to be low. It's going to be like a roller coaster. And there are going to be some years that are going to be great, some years that are going to be terrible. And we have to have a bag of tricks to figure out what's going to work when things get rough and how to keep the momentum going when things are actually great. So the Renew Teacher came from that. Remembering my why, my purpose for coming into education in the first place. And then also realizing that I need to call off because this is too much right now, and taking care of myself, and being able to say no to certain things and being able to do what was best for the kids in my room and not what somebody else was necessarily telling me to do, because I knew that wouldn't work for my kids. So being confident enough in my abilities to make decisions that work best for the scholars that I'm working with. So all of that played a role into becoming the Renew Teacher. I had to renew my passion because my passion was slowly dwindling that year. Fast forward to my year 10, I was in the same district for 10 years, and things were going well, but I just felt like I was becoming stuck. I felt like I was at the top and there was nowhere to grow. And I knew that if I stayed there, then I would probably end up quitting as well. Because you never want to be the best person in the room, or else you don't have anyone to grow from. And I felt like I was at that point, even though I probably wasn't the best. I was feeling that way, and I knew I was getting big-headed and feeling too comfortable and confident. It's time to move on and try something new. So that 11th year, the struggle was real. It was a whole eye-opening experience. Different school district, different school, different types of students, different environment. And I have learned so much in the past 4 years. Definitely has humbled me, and gotten me back to renewing that passion.
Okay.
So yeah, and it's a real challenge. There's some things I don't agree with. The first year I didn't have a lot of fun, because I felt like there were certain things I had to do, and if I didn't do them this way, then I was going to get in trouble. Like I have never heard the word compliant as much as I have in the past 4 years since I changed districts. And I hate that word, but
not a fun word.
No, not at all. And that first year in my new district, I didn't have very much fun, and I didn't really think about quitting, but I knew that if I couldn't have fun doing what I love to do, that I wasn't going to stay.
Okay.
So again, the renewed teacher, revamped a little bit more, and I came up with just, well, what's making me say, how am I able to overcome some of these obstacles? And how am I able to stay so passionate and committed to what I set out to do in the first place? And that's what the renewed teacher is all about, just staying committed to that passion and renewing that passion, because it's not just, oh, I renewed it once. No, it's an ongoing process. It never stops. It's an ongoing process. And for some, it can be tiresome.
Yes, yes, I can totally see that. But approaching it from that perspective, that it's almost like you're anticipating that there's going to be ups and downs, and not preparing yourself to deal with the valley.
Right, right.
In advance, versus the expectation that everything's supposed to be great, and if things aren't great anymore, then I need to make an exit.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, and I think that actually parallels a lot of, well, pretty much anything that you want to be successful in. It parallels the experience that you'll go through. Is you're going to have valleys. Not going to be peaches and cream all the time. And people mistake valleys for a sign that they're misaligned or that they're in the wrong space, but that's not always the case.
Right, right.
So I find it's great that you're able to have a strategy to where if you hit that valley, you have to remember your why and get back to what caused you to go down that road in the beginning, and what caused that spark. You have to revisit that, because there's going to be times when you kind of forget.
Yeah.
You kind of drift, because there are parts of everything that are not the most fun aspect of it. That's not why you necessarily got into it.
Right.
But there's going to be aspects that have to be done in order for things to flow, in order for things to function. Like you said, there's compliance. It's not going anywhere. It's not going to disappear. It's not the greatest part of your job, but it's something that has to be done to get back to the part that you love the most.
Right.
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 So let's talk about what do you share with teachers on how to get renewed? You talked about self-care. You talk about expectations for what you're facing in the job. Can you give some examples of things that you share, some of those nuggets? I've seen a few of them on your posts. Always a great energy, but you always share some wisdom. Can you give some examples of things that you commonly share?
So for me, like I said, the times that I wanted to quit is the times where I wasn't having that much fun. And like I said, and like you said, I didn't get in profession to have fun, but I knew I wouldn't do it if I wasn't having a certain amount of fun. So when I think about this whole remote teaching thing and just teaching in general, is if I'm not having fun, the kids are not having fun. And if the kids ain't having fun, that's going to turn into me still not having fun, right?
Yes.
So I try to do things that are fun for children. What do kids like to do? If you don't know what kids like to do, ask them. So more recently, all the 25 kids in my class, they love playing the game Among Us. It's a cell phone based game where there's an imposter among them, and they have to basically go through these different battles to figure out who the imposter is.
Okay, interesting. I don't know that one.
Yeah, they have a blast with it. So one day we had a little extra time. Most of my kids had cell phones. So I downloaded the app on my phone and we played, and we had like 15 minutes left over and we played the game. They had a ball. So the next week I was like, you know what? We do this, and this. Y'all can play the game for 15 minutes on Fridays. The next week, the time came. 10 kids did what they were supposed to do. I put them in a breakout room and they were able to play that game. The next week, those kids came back and did more work. And then 2 more kids started doing more work, because they're like, oh, they really got to play. So just trying to make learning as fun as possible. I do believe that fun and fundamentals can coexist. I believe that the kids can learn hard things and still have fun learning about some of those hard things, like racism, prejudice, just all the things that like segregation, all the stuff that we have, like the Black people have endured, that's not easy to talk about. And it's not always fun to make fun. But when you have a balance of fun and a balance of seriousness, then it flows well. It's like a railroad track. They just go together and it just works out. And the kids will engage in conversation. They will ask questions. And questions is what we want them to do. We want them to question why things are the way that they are. Because that's what keeps them engaged and keeps them wanting to learn more.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. And I think finding a way to make things fun for kids is important, because all kids really want to do is have fun. And like,
yeah, very true.
That's what they want to do. Even when I think about my 5-year-old son, he just wants to play. So we have to make learning, and it's not that learning and play are separate, because how do most kids learn? They learn through play. They learn through pretend. They learn through make believe.
So
and
important.
That doesn't change just because they are 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 years old. Adults like to play games too. Like,
Yes. We like to play.
Exactly.
We're serious all the time, right?
Right. Like, I don't know if you have a PlayStation, but I know my husband does. He likes to play video games sometimes.
Now, see, I'm going to date myself.
You got an Xbox?
I know. It's worse. I have the first Nintendo.
Look, you play Mario?
I play Mario.
I will take one of those.
Yes, I play Mario. My gun doesn't work, so I cannot play Duck Hunt.
Oh, man.
So my gun doesn't work, but I have played the Nintendo I grew up with. I have played with my children.
Yes. So if I can find one, I will definitely play that with my children. Like, I kid you not. And they will have a good time too.
Yes. And they've also played Atari.
So I don't know if I can find an Atari. I played Atari growing up. My parents still had one when I grew up, when I was growing up. But if I can find one, I'll do the same.
Yep. So anyway, I don't want to sidetrack too much, but
yes.
But yes, learning should be fun, because like we said, we're growing up in a world where learning is going to be required. It's a lifelong journey, a lifelong experience. And there's not going to be a situation where you go and you get a degree and you learn everything you need to learn in school, and then you go and get a profession and you don't have to teach yourself anything else for the rest of your working life. Those days are gone.
Right. Because we all know now that we do not learn everything we're supposed to learn in school. So we have to make sure that we help children see that learning is not just, oh, I'm done with 12th grade, so now I'm done with school.
Right.
Or if I did my 4 years in college, so now I'm done. No, it's an ongoing thing. And it's not always fun. So we do have to teach that part. It won't always be fun. All lessons won't be Cadillacs. You're gonna have some lemons every once in a while. And all lessons won't be fun. Like, some stuff is really drill and kill, and you won't learn it unless you learn it, drill and kill sometimes.
Right.
It's like that even as an adult. Paying bills is not fun. Like,
yes. Yes.
But, and even though we're spending money, that's the part that's not fun. Going shopping is a little bit more fun, but you're still spending money. Like, it's this,
Yep. And that's a delicate balance to say, okay, my responsibility as an educator is to find ways to engage the kids and keep learning fun, so that they learn to associate learning with a fun experience, because they're going to have to do it throughout life, right? But also helping them understand there will be times where it's a grind. Right. And you have to learn to push through that and get it done anyway, because it's necessary.
Right.
So a delicate balance, but I think it sounds like you're learning how to master balancing that and teaching both sides of the coin. Yes.
And I do that like early on, because based on my life experiences. And then one thing that's really important that I think teachers need to do is make sure to have good relationships with the parents of the kids. I do think that's really important. Not just relationships matter, period. Relationships with the students and relationships with parents. Because everybody's values are not the same as yours, but it does not invalidate the values that the parents have for their children.
Okay.
But the bottom line is you have to let parents know that we're on the same team. We both want your child to be successful. And the way that I want your child to be successful might be different than the way that you want your child to be successful, but both of those things can happen.
Okay.
And like, I'm very straightforward with my families. I don't really have issues or negative experience with families. I can count probably on one hand the issues I've ever had with families in my 15 years of teaching.
Okay.
And I remember them because it happens so, they weren't traumatic.
So rare.
They're rare and they weren't traumatic.
Okay.
But most times they're always like, okay, I can tell you care about my child, and go ahead and do what you got to do. Like I visited all of my students the last week and the week before, dropped off Christmas gifts. A couple of my kids, they never log on ever to our remote learning. But I still stopped out their houses. And the one kid, I was like, look, what is going on? And I'm like, I done talk to your mom. I text your mom every day to get you on. And you're still not logging on. What's going on? I'm like, I need you logged on because I need you to learn. I don't want you falling behind. I want you to come on and have fun. All your friends is on. Why ain't you on? Like trying to peer pressure them a little bit.
Uh-huh.
The next day.
But Krystal, okay, but listen, what makes you do that? Not every teacher is doing that. Like, what makes you stop by a student's house that's not logging on and have that conversation?
I want everyone to do well. I want their dreams to come true. When I see what happens to Black men in America, that bothers me. And I know that a lack of education can sometimes make that more prevalent in Black boys' lives, and Black women's lives. And I know that education is one of the ways to help prevent certain things from happening. There are people that are lost out in the world, and they end up making, sometimes it is poor decisions that make people, that have bad things happen to people. Sometimes it ain't. I mean, let's be real, sometimes it's not, because systemic racism is real. But I don't ever want to have a doubt in my mind that anything happening to any of my scholars is because of something I did not do as an educator. And I know that parents need help. Because as a parent, I know that there are times when I need somebody to step in and be like, now, Krystal, you ain't have to say that to your son like that. Like, whether it's an aunt and uncle or just a friend that was nearby that happened to overhear something. Even my sister had to check me a couple of times. But, like, parents need help.
Yes.
And even, like, in this whole pandemic, not being able to find a babysitter for my own children when I know I need respite. You know, I need a break. I know that some of these parents need a break as well. And sometimes hearing something from someone, the same thing your parent is saying to you from somebody, sometimes makes a difference.
It does.
Like,
that is so true.
Yeah, like I know that the little boy who I was particularly speaking of, I know that his mom is saying stuff to him and he's just not listening. And I was like, well, and I didn't ask her how could I help, but I knew that she would accept what I was saying to him, just based on the conversations I've had with her.
Yes.
But the thing is, bottom line is I really do care. And I want to see them be successful. And then because compassion fatigue is also a real thing, I know that if I don't do my best on my part, I will more than likely feel guilty that there's something maybe more I could have done.
Okay.
Like there was something more I could have done to help this child to not fail or to be more successful. And
I'm a digger. I get up under the skin. So so when you say because you want them to be successful, what does that mean? What are you really trying to give them?
So do I want all my kids to go to college? I mean, not necessarily, because they don't all need to go to college for their dreams to come true. Some of them don't know what their dreams are, and I do ask them, what do you want to be when you grow up? What do you want to do when you grow up? Some of them don't know yet. And I said, well, our goal this year is to try to figure out what that is. So that's what I mean by being successful, by coming up with something that you want to do and working towards that. Some of my scholars have some real talents. Like there's like 2 kids in my class. They are phenomenal artists and they're 10 years old. They can draw anything. They can create anything. They can paint anything. And I'm like, what you gonna do with that? Like, what do you want to do with it? And they don't know what they want to do with it. And I was like, well, we got to figure something out here. There's some that
Right.
are,
It can't go to waste.
we got to figure out what we're going to do with that. There's some phenomenal athletes. But then they're also like borderline genius. And I'm like, well, what are we going to do with both these things? Because you can play ball and you can still, have this academic stuff going on the side. What are we going to do with this?
100%.
That kid kind of knows what he wants to do. And I was, all right, well, let's make it happen. Like, I need you logged on every day. I need you asking questions. I need you to participate. And when you don't get it, you got to speak up. It's not about making them successful to get them to go to college. It's about helping them realize their potential and helping them have their dreams come to fruition. That's the bottom.
Okay. So now you're getting to my stuff. Now you're getting to my stuff. We're talking about dreams coming to fruition, and that is my ballpark. Sure. All right. So we've talked about, you mentioned young Black males and some of the issues that we're facing in society today. You mentioned wanting to empower your students.
Yes.
And for them to be able to determine their own destiny and realize their full potential, right?
Yes.
Which is right in line with why I wrote Finding My Why, which was to encourage and inspire kids to let them know that, hey, you have a gift. You have something inside you that you can use to impact the world. Let's find out what that is and get about the business of making that a reality.
Yes.
Right. And the main character of the book is a Black male, a Black boy, and that was intentional. It doesn't mean the book is only for Black kids, right?
Right.
But we have to move beyond that. The child is Black because I, as a Black male, grew up in a world where a lot of Black kids did not see themselves becoming anything but athletes or entertainers potentially. And if that did not work out, there was no other plan.
Right.
And that might not have even been their gift. It's just the only thing they thought they could do that would improve their circumstances.
Right. Exactly.
Right? They shouldn't be limited in their scope to only being those things. And that might not be what they're created to be or where their gifts are. Right. So they need a broader sense of reality and a broader picture of what they can become. And that's what I was trying to achieve with the book, was to open their perspective and get them to see themselves in a different way and get them to accept that I have something inside me. Let me find out what it is.
Yes.
Let me use it to its fullest. Right.
Yes.
So I have a kindred connection with you because I think you, in your avenue, in your vein, are working to achieve the same thing for your kids. Right.
Yes, sir.
So do you think our current education system is set up in a way that makes it conducive to teachers achieving that objective, to helping kids realize their full potential and identify what their gifts are and really go down the path to being what they're strongest in, right? Or is it still producing workers? Right.
The short answer is no, the education system is not doing that. The long answer is there are pockets of areas in the country or schools that are doing some of that work. So when I think about the counselor at my school, my school district does have a program that helps. It's called Naviance. And what the kids do is they take these surveys to figure out more about who they are. And based on their responses, it shows them what their interests are. Because some kids, they can't articulate what their interests are. They know what they like to do, but they don't see how that relates to their future. So Naviance kind of helps them narrow down what their interests are, but also show them later on what they can do with those interests. And then what they would have to do in high school in order to make that interest turn into some type of, I guess, an income. You know what I mean? It doesn't really pigeonhole them because they go through the process throughout the year in the district, throughout the years of school throughout the district. And the first time I did it with a class, it was really cool because one of my students, she said, well, I'm not really good at math, but this is But based on my survey, it's saying that I should do something with math. And that doesn't make sense to me because I like math, but I ain't good at math. And I'm like, well, perhaps you're better at math than you think you are. There's a reason why this popped up. This wasn't an accident. You took the survey. Nobody told you the answers.
Yeah, maybe you have the capacity for math, but you haven't discovered it yet.
Exactly. So it really opens up opportunities for kids to talk about it. But as the teacher, you have to make the time to talk about it with the kids. So even last year, my principal, I'm not sure how it came about. Maybe it was the principal or the counselor, but my school had the opportunity to go to a Black college tour. My fifth graders went to a Black college tour and learned about HBCUs. And I was like, well, you have to let me go. I teach the entire fifth grade. And I teach social studies. I can tie this into social studies curriculum.
There you go.
You have to let me go. So, and I was like, we're going on a Tuesday. And I teach fifth grade all day on Tuesday. They won't be here, so might as well let me go. So he did let me go. And we came back and we talked about fraternities and sororities and just what different universities. And at that point in time, I had one white student, and he was in with it too. He was like, "Oh yeah, I want to go to Hampton University." I was like, "What?"
I love it. I love it.
That's right. But even he was interested in learning about HBCUs because it was something that was foreign to him as well.
Okay.
So I do think, like I said, certain schools, different pockets in the country and in the States, they are working on helping kids realize their dreams and not just focused only on content, because content is important. Kids have to know the basics, but they also have to have an identity.
Yes.
And if they don't know who they are, who they want to be, or they don't see people that look like them doing things that they're interested in, then their identity it's not fully there. It's confusing. They're confused.
Okay.
They're scared,
Okay.
I don't think the system is set up to make kids realize their dreams, but I do think some schools are putting those things in place because they realize something different. They see that kids need something more.
Okay. So in pockets, it's happening, right?
Yeah.
Certain people or certain systems are taking initiative to go
Yes.
down that road and to expand, their notion of education.
Yes.
How do we go about making that more widespread?
Oh, that's a good question. And honestly, I don't know. It has to be on a national level, and I don't know if education policy, foregoing some of the testing to make room for it, because let's face it, we're all pigeonholed into having to take these high stakes tests starting in third grade in most states, and that does take up a bulk of our time. You can't imagine how much time we cut from social studies or science or the arts just to focus on math and ELA. As if they're the only things that matter, and if those are the only things that tell a kid that they are smart, or that kids want to deal with, or want to. Of course, we got to know basic math to survive. We have to know how to read to survive, but there has to be a space for passion development. There has to be a space for identity development. There has to be a space for kids to do the things that they love.
Yes.
And sometimes that thing is a love of math. And I don't even think we do a good job at developing that passion.
Okay.
I think we focus so much on a content. It's very straight and narrow. You're going to do this for this test, but what about the test of life?
Right. And that's where, as a life coach who works with teens, that's the kind of thing I come up against, is helping kids learn how to deal with life, right, so that they can be successful, because you can be smart, you can be promising, you can have all the promise in the world, but if you don't know how to navigate life, right, you can still end up not fulfilling your potential and not being as successful as you could, and not living a life of purpose and meaning.
Exactly.
So, and that's where I focus. And so I asked that question because I think it's a direction our school systems need to move. And I'm really wanting to see things move that direction more, but it's a huge, monstrous task, undertaking, and we have to fundamentally change people's notion of what education means.
Yes. Yes. I
And
agree 100%. And it's a daunting task. It's not going to happen overnight. And I don't know if we start from the bottom up or we start from the top down or meet somewhere in the middle. But I do think some schools and some systems have some smaller systems. They're on the right track.
okay. So something I'm noticing in my profession, I'm also I'm in HR, so I'm like a business advisor. So I work with business leaders on how to manage their teams to make them productive and help make sure individuals are growing professionally and things like that, right? So we're doing a lot of distance working, right?
Right.
So the world could be moving in a direction where people are working remotely more. I mean, like even more than now, it's more of the norm. It could be more of the norm when this generation of students become working.
Right.
It could be more of the norm. So them practicing distance learning could be preparing them for a work world that resembles how they're learning now, right?
Right.
So that being said, the social disconnect of distance learning is something that some kids need more help navigating than others, because emotionally, if a child is an extrovert and they're very socially interactive, it can be emotionally tough for that child to engage in distance learning for a long period of time.
Yeah.
So that to me is increasing the significance and the need for a more comprehensive approach to learning and supporting the emotional development of the student, because if they don't know how to navigate that, it could cause a problem in the future with student performance academically.
I agree 100%.
So do you think the distance learning model is sustainable over a long period of time? Or do you think we should move back toward a in-person learning model that eliminates the distance learning component?
That's a really, really good question. I think that it could work long term for some students. Um, some students are still the ones, my extroverted students, they are extroverted online. They stand out. And all the kids know who they are. They're like, they don't act out, but they participate a lot more. They're willing to take more risks. Even if they're wrong, they still participate and they take more risks. But they're also willing to listen and get feedback when they're wrong and,
Okay.
move on with that. I'm more concerned about my introverted ones.
Interesting. Okay.
Because yes, you're introverted, but there are people that you talk to, and because you're introverted, you're not reaching out to those people. Like my extrovert students, because we use Microsoft Teams, they have been able to make their own groups, and teachers don't even know anything about those groups, and they're communicating and having video chats with each other in their own groups. My introverted students are not necessarily doing that.
Okay.
I'm very concerned about them. And then students that have attention deficits, I'm worried about them, because those tend to be the ones that are falling behind because they can't focus for whatever period of time you need them to focus for, to learn what you need them to do independently. And those are the ones that you kind of have to watch, but if they don't turn their cameras on, you can't really watch them. If they're not fully engaged, then you can't really keep track of them. So I don't think it's sustainable for all students. I think the ones that are, like I said, extroverted, the ones that are naturally motivated to learn, like they're going to be on and do what they got to do no matter what. But then you have some that if they're given an inch, they're going to take them out and not even log on because nobody's paying attention to them.
Right.
So I think for most children, in-person learning might be best, especially if there's an adult around in the home that's able to keep an eye on them. And let's face it, if you're working from home as well and your child's online, you're not really paying much attention to your child because you're working too.
Okay. Yep.
So like even me, like my son's in kindergarten and he's doing distance learning. And there are times when he's in the other room and I'm over here and I'm definitely not paying attention to him.
Yes. No, it's a challenge. It's a challenge, even if you are working from home and able to accommodate because you're at home with the child. It's tough to navigate.
Yeah.
And a lot of our, the teams that I support, it comes up quite a bit with, team members trying to navigate distance children who are distance learning with meeting the demands of their job.
Right.
So that in and of itself makes it difficult to sustain over the long term, and not everybody has the flexibility to be at home with their kids as well. So obviously that makes it difficult as well. But it was something I wanted to ask because I see the world moving that direction
Yeah.
in terms of the work world. So even if the kids aren't actually doing it as far as learning, maybe incorporating some sort of skills that will prepare them to do it would be advisable, even if it's at the high school or college level.
And let's be real, this is not true distance learning. This is emergency distance learning.
Yes.
We're still in an emergent state. So I feel like it could work if this weren't an emergency. I feel like it could work if we weren't in a pandemic. But for the most part, we're still in an emergency.
Yeah.
And so this is not, it's not true distance learning. It's not true remote learning. And I feel that if it were true, things would be different. My own child would not be home if I were a real remote teacher, because my child would be in real school,
Right.
I would have a choice to be at home or be in my school, and not be forced to do one or the other. So we have to keep that perspective. I think a lot of people are like, they're trying to overlook that part. We can do the best that we can right now, but this is not true remote or distance learning. This is the emergency distance and remote learning and teaching.
Okay. Great point. Great point. It is quite different because it's a huge Band-Aid of us trying to get through the pandemic, deal with the situation at hand.
Yes.
Okay. Great point. Well, I want to move this great information that you've given us on your experience with the educational system and your thoughts on that. But I don't want to close out without getting back to you and your purpose and your plans for the future. So let's talk about you and what you want to achieve ultimately. What are you looking to achieve at the end of your life, at the end of your days, both with career and with your life in general? Because you're an educator and you talked about potentially doing some other things, life coaching, something outside of the K-12 system. But at the end of the day, you're a teacher.
Right.
The K-12 system is a avenue for you to use that gift. That doesn't mean that's the only avenue you can use for that gift. You can do it other ways as well beyond that, if you so choose, right?
Right.
So what is your vision for your life as we close out our interview? Where do you want to see Krystal at the end of your days? What do you want to say you've achieved and the mark that you've left in your life?
That is a great question. And as I ponder the answer to that question, I don't think I've come to the final answer yet. But I do know that I want to leave a legacy, and I know that legacies are often left with the next generation, and they are passed down, through time. So I know that even within my first 15 years in the education system and teaching, that I've already impacted many lives. Like my first group of students, they've already, some of them already graduated college, and they have reached back to me and told me that I've made an impact in their lives. And for me, that's enough for now, right?
Okay.
And then even, fast forward just 4 years ago, I have kids calling me that are like freshmen in high school now, like, man, Miss Smith, I'm so glad you were tough on me on XYZ, because now I see why I needed to know that. I didn't know it at the time, but now I know. But eventually I want to, what I'm doing now is, helping educators navigate these systems. That's something that is always, obviously, like my third year teaching, I knew I wanted to go back and help other teachers, meet their goals in the teaching profession. So whether I go back and teach at a university at some point in time or go back and get my PhD, that's yet to be seen yet, but something that is interesting to me, of interest to me. I don't want to say everything, right? But I do think that I have like the entrepreneurial that built inside of me. And it took me a while to realize that, because I was like, wait, my dad was an entrepreneur. And I didn't even think about it that, like I said, he had his own DJ company. He, that was his side gig, but that was where his passion was. And over time, I felt like, I was like, oh, this is what my dad felt when he was doing this. This was his thing. And I do feel like I have that in my spirit as well. So I know at some point in time, like I said, I don't know if I'll ever leave the classroom, but I do know that there is something more that I will be doing, whether it be on the entrepreneurial side or whether it be in some university or college. I feel like that is definitely up the alley, in the alley, perhaps writing a book or two, something like that.
Oh, I like that.
And that also goes back to first grade. My first grade teacher saying, wow, you're a really good writer. And it happened again back in, high school and things like that. Like my peers, I wrote this one book in 9th grade, and my classmates were like, man, you need to get that written. I have no idea what a book is now. But I just remember like my peers saying, man, that was so good. You need to write another one. And I never did. But I just remember, them saying that. So yeah, that's I do enjoy writing, when I take the time to do it. So it's that's probably in the future as well.
I love it. I love it. Leave no gift unused, I always say.
I love that. Leave no gift unused. I love that.
All right. So as we close out, there's a couple of questions I always ask every guest.
Okay.
All right. So the first question is, what's your idea of a meaningful life?
Making sure that you never give up on your dreams. And like, I know for me, I dreamt of becoming a teacher, right? I dreamt of one day being a wife. I dreamt of one day being a mother. So now I dream of my children growing up, my brown boys growing up and seeing their dreams come true, whatever those dreams may be. I have dreams for them, but I want them to live their dreams, and I want to grow old and see that happen. And they're still so little. They're 5 and 1 years old, so who knows what their dreams are. But I know my 5-year-old, he loves art. He loves music. He loves learning, and I can't wait to see that come, what that looks like as he grows up as an adult. And I'm hoping that school doesn't stifle him,
Right.
So I think just what it means to live a successful and happy life is just working towards your dream and having hope that they will come true, because not everyone's dreams come true for various reasons, but just never giving up on whatever it is that you want to come true.
That's beautiful. And then my second question is, the people that came across your path over the course of your journey, at the end of your days, they will say Krystal L. Smith was someone who, what?
Never gave up on me and helped me see the potential in myself.
Awesome. Amazing. Krystal, thank you so much for agreeing to share your time with us today. I want to commend you for the work you're doing and everything that you're doing to uplift both teachers and students. You've taken it upon yourself to not only use your gifts as an educator to help your students, but to also support teachers who really, really need support to make sure they get the most out of their teaching ability. Don't give up too soon on their calling to be teachers, right? Because sometimes people can get down, you can reach a valley, but that valley doesn't last forever. Learn how to push through it and learn how to make sure you're giving yourself self-care so that you're fully equipped to be at your best in your profession and in your calling. So I commend you for the work that you're doing to support teachers and students. Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing a little bit about your background today. And hopefully I can get you to agree to come back again someday.
Yes, I will come back. Just let me know when. This was great. Again, I thank you for the opportunity. I love what you're doing. I can't wait to read your book to my boys. It just came today, so I'm so excited.
Awesome. So, tell me what they think about it. Make sure you let me know their thoughts.
I sure will. Yep, I sure will.
Well, the 1-year-old can't tell you thoughts yet, but the 5-year-old can.
If he sits there and drinks his milk and listens to the book, I know he likes it. If he goes like this to the book, I know he doesn't like it.
Okay.
So I'll let you know what he does.
All right, let me know which one. But if it's bad, don't post it on my social media page. Just send me a DM.
I won't.
All right. This has been Life of Legacy. Remember, at the end of the day, what your life means is up to you. What's your impact?